B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. We know this week's parsha is Bahalotcha, and at the end it talks about a very interesting episode of a family feud. We know that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu's older sister Miriam, starts talking Lashon Hara behind Moshe's back to Moshe's older brother Aharon, the Kohen Gadol, and she says, why did Moshe separate from his wife Sipporah? What, he thinks he's a wise guy? He's better than us? We're also prophets. So immediately God summons all three of them, Moses, Miriam, and Aharon, these three siblings, to the outside the Ohel Moed, the tabernacle, and he chastises Miriam. And she says, God tells them, Miriam, you're, albeit that you guys are prophet, but Moses is head and shoulders above you. Moshe is peh el peh. There's a very, very important difference between the way God revealed himself to all other prophets. It was in a foggy, sleepy way. But Moshe was like talking one person to another, pure clarity, and therefore God punishes Miriam. But the Torah tells us something very important about Moshe. And the topic for today is, what is the most desirable, the most outstanding quality a human being could have in the eyes of God? That God will prize him as this most outstanding and desirable trait and quality and characteristics that we have to develop within ourselves. And the answer is humility, anava, because when God writes that when they were talking behind Moses' back, Moses was not offended at all. Moshe Rabbeinu ra'aya mehem, because it says, Vayish Moshe anav me'od na'al kol ha'adam asher al pnei adama. Moses is the most humble person on the face of the earth. So the commentators say the Torah very seldomly talks about Moshe's qualities, but we see that God saw it fit to talk about Moshe's humility. Why is humility so amazing? Because the Rambam says a beautiful idea. He says, in the end of this week's parsha, we see two things about Moshe that he's number one in the world at. There's nobody better than him. He's the most humble, and he's the most closest and most clarified prophet in the world. This is no coincidence, because when we have ego, when we have self-worship and narcissism, and God forbid we are selfish, these are barriers between us and God. It doesn't let us get close to God. The more we break down our ego and we break down our self-worship and laziness and selfishness, we're breaking the barriers. If like God is like, to make a parable, like light, if you have thick mud, you can't see him. The more you break down and clean yourself of this ego, of this self-worship, the closer you get to God. So it's no coincidence. Moses was the reason why Moses became the greatest prophet is because he realized that the only thing that is important to worship is God. The only thing that really exists is God. And this is why the more we're humble, the more we get closer to God. And I lost around 10 days ago, me personally and the LA community at large lost the real personification and embodiment of this great attribute of Moses, which is humility. And that was Rabbi Chaim Fassman, the Rosh Kollel of the LA Kollel. Anybody around him, he was so great in so many ways. He was the pioneer that established the first higher education for all the community and to develop scholars. Yet, as great as he was in his Torah, he was a living embodiment of the ultimate humility. I was talking about all his greatness to one of the people of the Kenisa, and he said, this guy is really, he sounds like a mini Moshe, and he really was. So any true Torah scholar, any true servant of God it's a most essential ingredient to realize we are nothing, God is everything. And the Rambam says it's no coincidence. The more we put aside selfishness, self-worship, ego, the more humble we are. We're breaking down the barriers between us and God, and we get closer and closer to God. And may Hashem help us to follow in the footsteps of all our great Torah scholars, which all have this outstanding and desirable characteristic of Moshe Raya Me'amna. Please don't forget to subscribe, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Shabbat Shalom.